Hey everybody, it's me, Felicia. I'm just popping on here to let you know that there will not be a Wonka Watch episode next week. I know, so unfortunate. We just wanted to take a week off for the new year and to kind of make sure we have a good stockpile so that we can keep delivering you that lovely, sweet Wonka content. Thanks for listening to this beast of an episode this week, and while we won't see you next week, we will see you the week after next week. Okay, enjoy.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Wonka Watch. You are ending 2021 on a weird note with us. Thanks for having us in your pocket, in your car, in your room, in your hearts and brains. As you all know, Felicia is her name. As you all know.
Did you just kind of call me like the crane? Like, what is this new persona I'm getting?
The crane and I reside in a cave far away where we have found ancient scrolls, and written upon it we decided Roald Dahl, Tim Burton, Thou'st think those can maketh the Wonka lore? Mel Stuart, you think you can take the threads of the original and weave your own tapestry? We say nay, sir. Listen closely. We have decided that we shall take up our own pens and write the word within the canon that shall be true from here on out. That is right, everybody. Here at Wonka Watch, we have created our own Willy Wonka fan fiction just for you.
And I do want everyone to know that the crane joke works even better because I perhaps look the least like a crane of any human on this planet.
I've never thought about looking at people and deciding on a scale.
You did tell me that
you look
one
like
time.
or not.
Okay, the first time we met, we were in a hotel room, and you said you look like a red panda, and no,
I stand by
right.
that.
You're
I
100%
forgot about
right.
that.
Welcome everybody to this episode where we write our classic Willy Wonka fan fiction. Honestly, I think this podcast was really a big scheme for us to get to this episode. Because we were embarrassingly excited to do this. Like, it's almost concerning the amount of joy we partook. And you'd think this is something that most podcasts would wait till they were, maybe 30 episodes in and clawing at the dredges. But no, we're going at it early.
Make sure people were like hooked in enough that they wouldn't immediately leave with something like this. But we said we don't fucking care.
True.
This is
truly for us. And also, if we do it early, that means we can do it again sooner. This is not a one-time occasion, everybody. This podcast is going to devolve into just us only writing Willy Wonka fan fiction. It's not even going to be. We're going to get to the movie and we're like, we would have done it better.
We're like, I would have really actually taken this metaphor this way, but whatever. Talk about a self-insert AU/lemon, you know what I mean?
You're really going curtain thick on this one.
For people, we will explain what fan fiction really is later, because some of you might not know. Bless your hearts. But Felicia, it's so weird. So I was actually watching NBC, and then suddenly the screen went really fuzzy, and I saw your face.
What?
And you know what it was about to tell me?
What did it tell you?
It was about to be like, hey there, world, it's me, Felicia, and I've got your Wonka Watch news.
Oh my god, I'm so glad that worked. Yeah, that was great. I was so glad that worked because I was pushing a lot of buttons behind the scenes, and honestly, I didn't know what I was doing, guys. People say hacking into a major news broadcast network is easy, but let me tell you, it's not as easy as I thought it would be. It's not as easy.
Oh man.
Hey,
I knew you could do it all along.
Oh my god, thank you. I'm having my anonymous era at this point.
Your anonymous era? Like the way that people are like, I was really into Hannah Montana back then, and now I'm just part of Anonymous. We're taking down everybody.
Oh my god. But guess what, guys? The reason I've come to you in such an insane way is that we actually have like real legit Wonka news for the first time in a while. Because these last few weeks, we've been talking a lot about Goo Goo clusters. We've been talking a lot about things that are like, that's not really Wonka. It's just kind of got chocolate in it. But we have some new news on the actual Wonka 2023 prequel in the form of a rumored new cast member.
Oh my
I know.
God.
This is fucking huge. This is huge, Elaine.
I have chills.
Truly. So this information was reported on, I think, about 2 websites. So if this is not true, I would not be shocked, but we're going to act like it's true because let's be real, we've got fucking nothing else. It was leaked by Hollywood Insider. Okay, I'm putting that in quotes. Daniel Richman, who, when I clicked on the link that it was sorting, went to this man's Patreon page. Did I consider paying the $5 to see what he had to say about Wonka? Yes, but I decided, you know what? I think I'm okay. I think I'm okay. I think I don't need to spend money on that. He just seems to like post new movie details and stuff and like press people subscribe to him to get stuff. I don't know how valid it is, but honestly, I don't care. But the new cast member we are introducing, and I'm very excited about this, Lane, is the one and only Hugh Grant.
I
know, right?
No.
It's Hugh Grant.
Yes.
I'm loving it. Here's the thing. I think this is probably actually very real because Hugh Grant was in Paddington 2, and the Paddington crew are the people who are working on this, and there's a lot of Paddington crossover with this movie. So I'm so excited about a Hugh Grant. But not only this, Elaine, we have details about what kind of character he might be playing. So I want you really quick. What kind of character do you think he's going to play?
Okay, I just want to stare into his beautiful. Well, he's. I mean, let me just stare into his eyes. Hey, Hugh.
Yes, Elaine.
Can you tell me a little secret?
Well, I guess I suppose I could.
Well, who do you play in Wonka?
I'm. Well,
I think he's gonna play a. What if he's Wonka's dad?
Elaine, I wish that's what it was, but unfortunately, Hugh Grant is reported to be playing an Oompa Loompa. He's playing an Oompa Loompa, Elaine. He's playing an Oompa Loompa. Elaine has
You're
walked
telling
out.
me this man.
I know.
They got Hugh Grant, and they're going to make him an Oompa Loompa.
Is he the one on the paddleboard? Was that Hugh Grant on the paddleboard? Could you imagine? Also, I want to say, since reading this article, I have developed a new term that I demand we exclusively refer to him as Hugh-o-Loompa on this podcast of only. Hugh-o-Loompa? Hugh-o-Loompa. I became obsessed with the phrase Hugh-o-Loompa, and I'd be walking around my house saying things like, don't talk to me until I've had my Hugh-o-Loompa. And I don't know. I think Hugh-o-Loompa is something very personal. But the fact, like, I read the article and I was like, oh my gosh, Hugh Grant's going to be in Wonka and he's going to be Hugh-o-Loompa. And like, I read that and I think it took me like a day and a half to process it and process the absurdity. Like, I was having to go and like reach out to friends and family members for consolement because I can't talk to Elaine about it, until we're on the podcast. But like, I admire Hugh Grant. I like Hugh Grant. I was excited when I was like, what? Hugh Grant's going to be in Wonka? And reading that he's an Oompa Loompa, it's just so many complex feelings and emotions. Elaine is fully standing up. She's pacing.
Come on a walk with me, guys. Hold on. Let me move all my shit. Okay. I can't. First off, I'm so sad that I wasn't able to be there for you in the moment. I understand.
Yes.
I'm trying to process this still. As you can see, I don't know what to do with this because first off, never would have expected Hugh Grant to pop out of, anywhere into this movie because they had announced everybody, which makes me wonder who else are they holding back on telling us about in this movie?
I mean, it's probably going to be a big cast.
Oompa Loompa?
I know.
Hugh Grant?
You look at who looked at Hugh Grant and said, you know what? He'd make a great Oompa Loompa.
Okay, I need to sit down again. I'm sitting down, guys. We're sitting down again. Okay. I'm really proud, first off, that I didn't full on yell. I don't know. Did I yell? I kind of blacked out.
No, you didn't yell. You were very measured in a way that was almost scarier than yelling.
Sorry, I feel like I haven't had anything really intelligent to add because I'm trying to. Are they trying to ease the Oompa Loompa by having someone who usually plays such gentle, soft characters?
Maybe.
And this is like, if we're talking friend, is he like going to be Willy Wonka's friend? Is he? It is a baffling choice.
I mean, it's difficult to move on from here. I guess we just have to move on. Hugh-o-Loompa coming your
Well,
way,
now
2023.
I wish I'd been able to do that as a fanfic. So some golden nuggets for next time to use, for sure.
I mean, Hugh-o-Loompa is a hottie. All right, let's talk a little bit about fan fiction and what I was able to learn about the Wonka fan fiction community as a whole from some brief views. So,
for anyone who doesn't know, let's talk a little bit about what fan fiction is. It's fiction written by fans.
Fan fiction is if you really liked a story and let's say you wanted to explore certain characters that the author didn't, or the movie didn't, or the show didn't. Someone might write that story for you, or they might disagree with something in the story and they'll do a what if scenario. Like there's so many different things, but it's basically people who take the basics of the media and then they'll make it their own.
yeah.
There are a lot of different types of these fan fictions and they each have their own term. There's a whole like
You
list
can
of
read,
terminology
there's a
with
huge
fan
trope
fiction.
list. I guess a great example of the kind of things that fan fiction offers is that I have genuinely read a Pirates of the Caribbean Succession AU fan fiction, and it was very fun. You know, like that's the kind of thing you can get in the world of fan fiction. Nowhere else.
Yeah.
Nowhere else will you get to read that kind of shit. But on the world of Archive of Our Own, it's perfectly free and available. But
Were there
Willy
two
Wonka,
characters you wanted to see get together? It can happen in fan fiction. No worries.
and it will happen so detailed and explicitly in a way that you never wanted.
50 Shades of Grey is the greatest example. That was a Twilight fan fiction that they just changed the names, and there you go, 50 Shades of Grey. So it can get out of hand very quickly.
Apparently one of the biggest romances of this year was a Kylo Ren and Rey fan fiction that got transported and just changed over some names.
It's just wild because people make fun of it, but then shit like that happens and you're like, I don't even know what to do anymore. So
yeah, I was a bad fan fiction connoisseur during my sophomore and junior year of college. Like my best friend, that was the thing we would do. We would read shitty fan fiction. And I'm not talking like we were going deep. So we were really into the band MGMT at the time, which was a small, like not a huge band. I mean, they're good. I'm not as into them as I used to be. But the thing was, we did not want to write fan fiction about them, but we were obsessed with the fan fiction written about the band because it was such a niche group that all of the fan fiction was insane written about it, to the point where we were reading like 2008 live journal ones. Like it was absurd. And that is how we spent all of our days in college. And then we started to like systematically write these parodies of those fan fictions, to the point where I filmed a version of one of these ones we wrote as an extra credit project for my film class. And my professor asked to see it. And I said, no.
oh my God. Wow. I love that so much.
So I'm deep in the bad fan fiction verse. Like this is what I do for fun sometimes. I wanted to kind of suss out what the Wonka fanfiction community really is. So I took a look on the big three websites. You got your fanfiction.net, you got Archive of Our Own, and you got Wattpad. Depth's Wonka is the most popular Wonka by far. Johnny Wonka has inspired more fanfic than you would believe. I was a little shocked when I read them. I understand why. Out of the Wonkas, that one would be the one, but also, oh my God. So Archive of Our Own, most of it on there seemed to be like supernatural, but it's at Willy Wonka, you know, like those kinds of fan fictions. And then some really, really gross ones that I was like, oh my God, someone take away your internet access. Do you know what I mean? Fanfiction.net. There wasn't as much on there. It was actually a very small. Everything was a lot less explicit, which was good, I think, for Willy Wonka. I appreciate that. And then, there was one person who was just writing poems about Willy Wonka, and they were like, another poem about my favorite candy maker. I'm like, good for you. I don't know. Wattpad. Elaine, Willy Wonka Wattpad is something that I didn't know was such a community until I looked on here. So there is a large amount of fanfic that was written by, I thought about reading one out on the podcast, but all of them are written by very obviously teenagers. And I'd kind of feel like a dick doing that. You know what I mean? Like they were kids, you know, but also the main trope that it seems to be is you are Charlie Bucket's older sister, who he takes instead of Grandpa Joe, and then you and Wonka get married by the end of the factory tour. I'm not joking, every single time. And a lot of them were called like Good Morning Starshine, because that's what, so he calls everybody Starshine.
My God.
And I am not joking. These had like 80K to 250,000 reads. Like, they are not small. And some of them were like 42 chapters. And I'm like, what is happening? So you were like Rosalie Bucket or like Evelyn Bucket, like all these names that did not even fit the universe. And these
definitely
are
just
very
their
much
names.
Yeah, and it's very much exactly what you think of with Willy Wonka fan fiction, where like one of them I looked at, the main character, I will say this one I think was called like My Chocolate Rose or something like that, and the main character was Rosalie Bucket. I don't feel bad talking about this one because there are, I think, like 300 reads on it, 300,000 reads, sorry. So like, it's not like I'm the only one who's seen this. And
yes.
every Rosalie Bucket was represented by Lily James, and every chapter had a new Lily James gif to accompany it.
Oh, yeah.
And it also had, you'd go to a chapter and there'd be an outfit of what she was wearing. And I was like, oh, we're back in the good old days.
I was going to say, that is classic fan fiction right there.
There was another one where the main character was represented by Ariana Grande.
What an interesting choice. Okay.
It was just really very accurate. So that's kind of what I found online. There wasn't any like crazy stuff, but it was nice to see like, this is some classic Wattpad.
Yeah, I don't think I mentioned my connection, like how I got into fan fiction, which I'm not like super in it, but every time I watch Avatar Last Airbender, I just get pissed because I'm a Zutara person. If you know, you know. And so that's where you can get all your Zutara goodies. And then also I was obsessed with Les Mis. And the Les Mis fanfic community, wow, they all want Anjolras to get with what's his face? The not old man, whatever. Anyway, it's like I got way too into that. And then I was like, I think I'm depressed. Not to say everyone who's into fan fiction is depressed, but there is a Venn diagram.
There's a large Venn diagram.
Sizable. Yeah. And then, I haven't really like dabbled back into it, but man, was that a good stretch of like middle school, dabbling through high school, dashing college during rough times. So
it's fan fiction is there for you in rough times. It's not something you go to when you're at your peak.
Yeah. And you don't always necessarily talk about it to other people. Like, people don't tend to be like, oh yeah, I love this fan fiction. You know, it's like some people, it's like a little dirty, guilty pleasure, but we're here at Wonka Watch to be like, do what you got to do.
Do what you got to do to get through it.
Be yourself. Be proud of you. Be proud of your OTPs.
Sometimes. Be proud of those 84 marked for laters on AO3. I'm with you, girl. I get it.
Yeah, it's fine. We're here for you.
We decided to kind of put our bad fan fiction writing to use and said it was time to write some fanfic. I know Elaine has a little bit of a short one, so do you want to start us off with your first piece, a bit of flash fiction?
I wanted to start off with what I imagine 10-year-old me or 8-year-old me or 7-year-old me would have tried to write. So it needs to have everything: danger, violence. I drew a lot of violent drawings as a child. I had a lot of repressed anger. It's fine. I would draw tornadoes hitting our house. So I try to get in that mindset. I wanted to put an author's note at the top that this is just a draft, like I'm working on it. But if you guys like it and leave a lot of reviews, maybe I'll write more. But otherwise, no. Okay. One night, Willy Wonka had been drinking too much peppermint schnapps. He felt very nice and enjoyed it very much. Then, all of a sudden, he saw a stranger walking. Not just any stranger, because real strangers don't exist to Willy Wonka. He's the Candyman. He knows everyone. This stranger was evil. Willy Wonka ran up to the stranger and hit him. It was Roald Dahl. How dare you, you villain? I'd kill you by murder. Yes, we fight now, Roald Dahl said. He took out a stack of books and started throwing them at Willy Wonka. Ouch, Willy said. He pulled out his cane and stabbed Roald Dahl through the heart. I made you, Roald said, a single tear falling down his face as he died. What have I done? Wonka said. He ran away crying. The end.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved it.
Every single one of those sentences was its own paragraph.
Really evocative.
Thank you.
I mean, while it was, I think I've been left speechless.
Mm-hmm. I liked the element where I have Roald Dahl getting killed by the cane. As we all know, he had that cane trauma.
Yes.
I thought it came very full circle. It's kind of a really big metaphor if you think about it. Like,
and you've also talked a lot about Willy Wonka killing people with his cane. So this is, I feel like, kind of a wish fulfillment for you.
But yeah, I don't know. So you guys let me know what you think. I could continue it. You know, maybe Willy Wonka is a serial killer now or something. So yeah.
Willy Wonka, Jack the Ripper AU. I'd love it.
Ooh.
As much as I love writing bad fan fiction, when I was approaching this, I was a little lost for ideas. I kind of ironically, I put a lot of pressure on writing good, low quality fan fiction, if that makes sense, because I've like studied it. So if I don't nail it, I get upset with myself, you know? So yeah. I was like, you know what, to take the pressure off, I'm going to go back to some old faithfuls of fanfic generators you can read online. And my absolute favorite is the Fanfic Maker, which is at thefanficmaker.com. And just to like give you a brief idea of what this is you put in what the world's called, your protagonist hobbies, and then a few side characters and a villain. That's all you do. Oh my God. That is all you do. And then for the relationship section, you can do my favorite feature, which is any/any, which means it will pick absolutely random pairings from the people you put in. And I've been obsessed with this thing for years. So I believe the people who I fed into this were Johnny Wonka, who I think is just Willy Wonka in this. But I went for Johnny Wonka because he was the most represented among the fan community. I think just straight up Timothée Chalamet's in there. I believe you and I are in there. I know we're in there.
Oh, fuck.
And I think Fickle Grubber shows up at some point. I think those were some of the names I threw in. So I have read this output before, and I'm very excited to read it all to you. It's a little long, but I think it's very good. So Willy Wonka meets Timothée Chalamet, the early years. Later, once they were alone and away from the others, Willy Wonka met with Willy Wonka in a nearby hangar. They'd been meeting like this a while now, often in the evenings or at night. A deep friendship had struck up after their previous adventures, but they kept it hidden as they didn't know what the others would think. They often did some talking, some chocolate making, maybe a few board games. They were quite close friends by now. This particular night, they were sharing secrets with each other, telling each other things neither had told others before, things that not a single soul knew. Then there was that one time I destroyed Willy Wonka's mobile phone. Oh, Willy Wonka, that's positively evil, and I should know. So here's the thing. I think the fanfic generator, when it said pick any, I did not enter Willy Wonka twice. I want everyone to know I did not intend this. And the fanfic generator said, why don't we have Willy Wonka dating Willy Wonka? Which, in the Wonka-verse, I guess this is Gene Wonka and Johnny Wonka.
I was going to say, is that where we're going here? Whoa.
They both laughed. The night had been full of stories like this. The time Willy Wonka blackmailed an astrologer. Or the time Willy Wonka fooled a beekeeper into thinking it was the end of the world. Endless stories shared just between them and no one else. It was making them closer. Closer than Willy Wonka had ever thought possible. Possible? I wish it said possible. I want Olive Garden. As Willy Wonka was telling another story, he thought he saw Willy Wonka examining him, looking with... Was that longing? No! Nah, couldn't be. The moment was over and they departed each other's company. Willy Wonka felt something had changed that night, but he wasn't sure what. Our sad adventurers walked backwards into the jaws of certain death.
What the fuck?
So we had a dash there. We're into a new section. Uncountable old ladies passed before they reached climax. Oh, look! We are at our destination we had to arrive to. That's the end of the section. What?
What? Uncountable old ladies.
It's like, what?
What? It doesn't even have... Is this like... Like, meanwhile, wherever outside where these Wonkas are, a bunch of old ladies, so many of them, you can hardly count them.
So then there's a new part that says, Willy Wonka at that moment felt in his pocket. That's strange. There was a note. It said he should rendezvous at the demolished beach at sunset. Willy Wonka kept this secret as it was clearly just for him. I feel like we're getting kind of a non-linear narrative going on here because I think that's the only way. This is like high literary fiction, you know, very experimental.
Yeah, avant-garde.
Why are you looking me like that? It's almost like you want me badly. Haha, Willy Wonka chuckled. You're my one true friend, Willy Wonka. Probably the best one I've had in a long time. I like talking to you and hanging out with you, and I even love listening to you sing. And now that you pointed it out, I think I might want to hug you a little bit. You're touching me? That's not considered appropriate behavior, Willy Wonka whispered, his bottom lip trembling while his lips felt frozen. Okay, so then it goes straight into Willy Wonka, kind of Willy Wonka x Willy Wonka young adult novel steamy scene. And I don't want to read it, so I'm not going to, but I am going to bring a little bit out from here. Willy Wonka knew he should stop. This was Willy Wonka. Willy Wonka! Could he dare wreck their close friendship? And what about their destiny? But that didn't bother Willy Wonka nearly as much. Willy Wonka was whispering sweet nothings into Willy Wonka's ear. Willy Wonka was all set to give Willy Wonka a glare, but it faded away when he got his first real look at Willy Wonka. I mean, sure, Willy Wonka had seen Willy Wonka before, but not really seen them. Not with these new eyes, which Willy Wonka now had. His eyes had been opened.
What? Willy Wonka had never really seen Willy Wonka. Oh my god.
So our heroes met up with Fickle Grubber shortly thereafter. Unfortunately, no one witnessed the events that followed, and the survivors aren't willing to talk about their dramatic experiences. We do know that Fickle Grubber was either killed or fled.
Why? Did they
Hold
kill
on.
him?
We don't know. One more paragraph. It's going to be so difficult for me to get this out. Elaine was missing when they returned. Elaine, however, was dismembered. Their corpse found a few weeks later. Willy Wonka returned a changed man. He'd been triumphant, but at what cost?
Got murdered by Willy fucking Wonka. And you'd never been mentioned in the fanfiction before. Also, never. They're on a date, and their date where he's allowed to jump around is because they're fucking killing me on demolished beach.
I think so. Willy Wonka returned to change. Okay, he married Reed. I don't know who the fuck Reed is.
Reed?
I don't know.
What if
I
it's
never
Reed
put in a
Fickle
character
Grubber?
named Reed. Apparently, although that too is shrouded in mystery. We may never know the events that happened that day, but one thing's for sure. This is not the end.
Well, it is for me because I'm fucking dead.
Yeah,
dismembered.
I wasn't
not just dead, dismembered.
Yeah, I wasn't sure
Oh
if I was
my
going to read this
God.
one on the podcast, and then I scrolled down to the part where they said they found your corpse dismembered, and I was like, oh, I gotta.
Here's the thing. Weirdly, this is kind of canon to Wonka's weird, not quite a serial killer, but, you know,
Right.
he pushes it in
No, he
the
does.
story. Why does that feel accurate, though?
You'd be the first to die on a horror movie.
God almighty. Dismembered.
I
Fickle
know.
Grubber, I thought we were friends.
Spin me another yarn, Elaine.
I don't
Tell
even
me,
know if I
tell me a
want to.
lovely story of Wonka and his crazy, kooky crew.
So this one all came from my brain. And
Okay.
this is one actually that's technically not finished, but I'm just going to read it up to where I got to. And
That's okay. In the spirit of fan fiction, truly. Just leaving things very unfinished.
just and then like you're following one and you love it, and then the person just never posts it again, but it left off on a huge cliffhanger. And then like I actually found one like that, and then 10 years later I found it again and was able to finish it, and it was shitty.
Oh, that's so sad.
Anyway, this is called The Factory 4, Sweet Sweet Revenge. This is gonna be so stupid. Okay. So we are all in agreement then. Augustus Gloop looked around the table. Augustus Gloop looked around the table. Veruca scowled at her ridiculous mixed drink, something called a Lemonado DiCaprio. Violet clenched her jaw, an old habit from chewing gum as a child. Mike was the only one who responded with enthusiasm. "Let's fuck up that asshole," he said. He chugged his beer and burped loudly. "That jackass has it coming." Veruca rolled her eyes. "I'd rather we went with my idea." "Your idea's stupid," Augustus said. "We can't hire a cartel to off him." "I need to use them somehow," Veruca said. When Daddy left me his nut business, I didn't think it would come with so much work and baggage and drugs. Violet tapped her fingers against her water glass. Drugs? What kind of drugs? Violet rubbed her nose. Strangers didn't seem to notice the subtle blue tint to her skin. But for the Factory 4 who had survived the horrors of that ill-fated day at Willy Wonka's hellscape, it was clear as day.
Elaine, I love this. This is fantastic.
Violet looked down at her hands. It's been hard finding something to replace the satisfaction of chewing gum. I don't get it, Mike said. You had one bad experience with a stick of gum and now you can't chew any of it? Violet threw an ice cube from her glass at Mike. Says the man-child who had to remove one of his kidneys and have 3 surgeries because he was elongated by a Laffy Taffy Polar. Mike waved a hand. We're gonna all be robots in 10 years anyway. Listen, Augustus said. It's been 20 years and the evil sugar man is still flouncing around with that fruit-eating poop mouse, Charlie.
This is so good. You said this one was bad. What are you talking about? This is phenomenal.
Disgruntled harumphs echoed around the table. I don't get why he won, Veruca said. I had the money to buy out Wonka, at least to be a sizable donor. We were only 11 years old. What sort of business sense were we supposed to have? I say we kidnap him, take him to a basement, slap him around a bit, Mike said. Make him eat a witch lasagna, if you know what I mean. The table was silent. Mike shifted uneasily. You know, witch lasagna. It's lasagna that you Mike, you're on parole? This is already pushing it, Veruca said with disdain. Luke, are you in? Luke, are you in or not? Augustus said. The 4 stared at each other before slowly nodding. The plan was set. Augustus knocked twice on the door. A slat opened, revealing the upper face of a woman. Hannah Calloway, Augustus said. Hannah narrowed her eyes. What? It is time for me to call in that favor? What favor? Hannah said. You know, the one where I ate all your burnt chocolates and pretended it was delicious so you could get all those investors to go in on your business. Hannah furrowed her brow. Let us in, Veruca barked behind him. Augustus waved her off. Fine, Hannah said, opening the door. Augustus walked in, the other 3 following him inside. The hut was cozy and warm. He instantly homed in on the plate of freshly toasted maple Pop-Tarts. Hands off, Hannah growled, taking the plate and hiding it in the adjoining room. When she came,
you do need to mention that you did take usernames from people who follow us on TikTok.
Yes.
Because somebody who's listening just was like, what the fuck?
Yes, yeah, by the way, if you think you heard your username like Lemonado DiCaprio, indeed, I did use your username. So these are all y'all. These are all y'all, okay? When she came back, Violet pointed to a framed map on the wall. Why do you have the state of Alaska hanging in your house? It's where I buried my gold bars, Hannah said. Before Violet could respond, she turned to Augustus. So what the hell do you want? We need you to sneak us into Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Hannah eyed the 4 of them. No way. You must, Augustus said. Yeah, bitch, Mike said. And that's as far as I got.
Elaine, that was fantastic. That's the best thing I've ever heard in my life. I think I just what did you have Augustus call Charlie again?
A fruit-eating poop mouse.
I didn't
that
know
fruit-eating poop mouse Charlie.
Your German accent is something I didn't know.
Is it? You don't know it because it's not German.
Well, it's not German, but I didn't expect you to come in that hot with it.
Oh, yeah.
God. Elaine, that was phenomenal. I would read a full novel about those.
Oh my God. Well, if we ever do this again and y'all want to hear more about their plan, let me know. I'll write the next chapter.
We take another turn to another little fan fiction generator, to the classic self-insert story generator. So the self-insert story generator.
Yes.
Have you ever used this before, Elaine?
No, but it sounds good. It sounds good.
This one, it doesn't really give a variety of outputs like the fanfic maker does. It's not as chaotic, but it is written weirdly, genuinely, and you fill out an extensive profile of the character. So I made Willy Wonka our main character. And after I'd done all that work, because you do a lot of work to get these self-inserts in there, you know, I didn't really feel like making a second character for him to go against. So I said, oh, let me just pick another famous character with a pre-made profile. And I'm very happy with my choice, and I'm going to begin reading. Willy Wonka, a despairing man of remarkable achievement, stood alone on the beach, gazing over the teal water with his melancholy amber spheres. His brunette hair danced lightly in the ocean breeze, tickling against one cheek as he tried to deny the stirrings in his heart, resting his cheek against one hand as he clacked the heels of his periwinkle boots together. He wore an amethyst suit with a pale button-down shirt peeking around his neck and a pair of magenta formal pants. His brunette strands brushed against his shoulders, complementing his despairing, pearly visage.
His despairing, pearly visage.
His thoughts wandered to his days in Severus's company. It must have been fate in mortal form that brought them together.
You did not! You did not!
It gave me a list of 8 fictional characters, and I said, oh, hell yes, give me that Severus Snape. And ladies and gentlemen, you're about to be treated to the worst Severus Snape impression you've ever heard in your life. It must have been fate in mortal form that brought them together. He knew from the moment he laid eyes on him that they were meant to be. From then on, Willy Wonka was sometimes needy and close, but then suddenly cold and fearful. Severus also behaved strangely, one moment adoring and scathing the next. That was how it was to this very day.
Willy Wonka,
Severus said simply, with no trace of emotion. His inky globes complemented his raven coiffure, belying his deep, dark heart. He was dressed in his usual everyday clothes. His skin was milky, and his form was slight. As Willy Wonka drew nearer, he caught a note of Severus's familiar scent that brought yellow pages to mind. His crystals softened. It always reminded him of the time they shared. Severus, I feared you might not come, Willy Wonka whispered.
I don't know why I bothered.
He murmured. Willy Wonka lowered his pools down and away back towards the cerulean sea. Then maybe you should go. A pause. No. Severus brushed his hand against Severus's almost by accident. Okay, what? Okay. No,
What?
we're moving on. Neither of them spoke for some time. It wasn't uncommon for them. They'd exchange poker-faced glances and walk in silence for hours, until finally they somehow touched, and overwhelmed by pain and loneliness, they would turn to each other. It was no different this time. They tracked halfway down the shore, down to where a cliff rose to block their progress, before Willy Wonka turned to Severus and whispered, I waited a long time for this day. For today. I missed you a lot. Severus didn't say anything. It's like I told you before. You're all I have. Willy Wonka sought out one of Severus's hands with his, but Severus drew away.
Just be quiet.
With a mournful glance, Willy Wonka let his hand drop.
Every time.
I can't do Severus Snape. It's so bad.
Cry, cry, cry. That's all you do.
Stricken, Willy Wonka turned away and began to weep. Each sob was a blow against Severus's will and heart. At last, he took a deep breath and dictated,
Stop, please. You have no idea what effect you have on me.
Why are you like this to me? Willy Wonka whispered. I don't understand. I need you, Severus. I need you like I need air. I do anything for you, but you still treat me this way. Do you hate me, Severus?
What if I did?
I would totally fall apart. I would have no reason to be. He waited for some kind of reassurance that it wasn't true, that it would never be, but it didn't come. He bowed his head. He should have known better than to expect such a display from Severus. Instead, he took a few steps towards the cliff and arched his head to gaze up its height.
If I could be as open as you, I would consider myself lucky.
Please let me in, Willy Wonka wept. Please, together we might be able to bear this cruel world. Willy Wonka was a freak. Severus was also a freak. Maybe Willy Wonka had a point, he thought. Severus approached him and brushed a finger below his copper depths.
Perhaps that might be,
he mused before stepping away again. Willy Wonka blinked and wet his cheeks with tears as Severus walked away and then hurriedly followed, for Willy Wonka had nothing else in this world. After a few moments, they found themselves walking down the beach again. Willy Wonka couldn't stop thinking about his shroud of pain. It plagued him endlessly while he was far from Severus and while he was near. It threatened to consume him. When Willy Wonka had let the faintest hint slip in moments before, it had already taken so much of his will. Severus's agonized windows to his soul passed over Willy Wonka once impassively before at last he seemed to steel himself and intone,
Willy Wonka, you've been worrying.
Severus, it's... And at that moment, everything came together. All the magic and the hurt that had been building that day, and he locked his spears with his and whispered,
You can tell me.
It was like a floodgate burst, or some barrier of fear. Willy Wonka shook his head. I don't know if I can put it into words lately. It's nothing. I just don't feel well. I don't know whether it is, whether it dwells in my heart or head, but it hurts, Severus. There's nothing that helps, except that sometimes I feel a bit better when you're by my side. Severus listened silently and solemnly. At last, when all the words had left Willy Wonka and he was at a loss for words, Severus reached out to him and took a deep breath to whisper back,
Willy Wonka, that's awful. That weren't how it is. I wish I could say more, Willy Wonka.
It's giving more Squidward than it is
Wonka.
Willy Wonka's eyes began to burn, and he abruptly pulled Severus into a fierce embrace. You, as long as you're here, I can make it.
Willy Wonka, the truth is, I feel the same way about you.
No.
What, Severus? Have you been in pain too?
Willy Wonka, I keep remembering it that day, Willy Wonka.
What?
I can't help myself. I don't want to think about it. It burns. But even when I sleep, it comes back to me in my dreams. I can't forget. Not for a moment. Not a moment's peace.
Willy Wonka laid a kiss on his jaw and rested his head against Severus's heaving chest as he murmured, Severus, that's something I felt too. My worst memory, sometimes I remember it again, and it hurts just like that. You're not alone, Severus. Their pain dissipated in a mist swept out by the ocean breeze and towards the setting sun, and they basked in each other's quiet companionship for a few moments. Now, the next brief chapter, content warning for homophobia?
What the fuck?
Sunset.
Willy Wonka lifted his head at Severus's words to behold the dying sun's salmon radiance. After a moment of silence, Severus asked,
How long will we last?
Please, let it be forever, Willy Wonka murmured in response. Neither of them spoke. Willy Wonka wondered if Severus was thinking the same thing as him, that it was unlikely that the world would let them be. Next, Willy Wonka spoke. Severus. No, wrong voice. Nope. Severus, I'm afraid of what they'll do to you. And Willy Wonka knew Severus had the same fears as he did. Severus.
You're a man, and I'm a man. You know we're both male. The world may never accept that. People might hurt you.
Severus spoke the truth, and Willy Wonka knew. That's why it was so awful. He loved Severus with all his heart. And yet, Severus, still, I love you so much. It doesn't matter what they say. I don't want anything more in this world than I want you. Severus only shook his head. Willy Wonka pleaded, Severus, please don't do this to me.
Willy Wonka, I'm only doing this for you.
No!
It has to be this way, don't you see?
For a moment, no one spoke. Severus stared into his eyes, and Willy Wonka stared into his. Severus gripped his hand tightly for a moment and then slowly started to let go. Willy Wonka's hand fell and swayed limply by his side. So, this is goodbye? Willy Wonka murmured.
I guess so.
Will I ever see you again? He whispered. I don't know. He ran away from the beach, away from Severus, away from everything. But he couldn't escape his memories. That incredible moment when they saw each other for the first time, all the trials they'd overcome together, and this one beautiful, perfect day on the beach. How could it come to this? Why? Why did it have to be like this? When Willy Wonka finally ran out of breath, he slumped to the base of a tree and sobbed. It was so close. Almost perfect. Almost everything he ever wanted. But now, he would never love again. And that's the end.
Oh my God.
I said, I'll take a sad ending. I didn't know it would do that.
Oh my God. First off,
that
all came from a generator?
Yeah, so here's the thing.
That's
it's very much a
insane.
fill-in-the-blank generator. It's not like a true generator. Do you know what I mean?
Gotcha.
But it is a highly advanced fill-in-the-blank generator, basically.
Oh my God, I'm sweating now. Whew.
I know. It's phenomenal. I was really upset because it did ask if I wanted them to have pet names for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I put in Candyman and Snake Bitch, but it didn't use those, and I was really upset about it.
Bitch.
I was really angry.
Oh my God. First off, I loved your voice. Your voices for both of them. I forgot that a big thing in fan fiction, and I guess it's just for a lot of first time writers, they have the urge to not just say eyes.
Yeah, it's the orbs,
it has
the
to
crystals,
be orbs,
the spheres,
the pools, the copper depths. Oh my God. I didn't know that was a pairing I really support, but now I do. But what a sad ending. I know. Oh my God.
So I guess to kind of bring up the mood, we're going to go into the only Felicia original on this podcast, which I titled A Sweet Surprise. To get the mood back up before we dive into Elaine's masterwork.
Oh my God.
So this one is a bit of a self-insert, and the self-insert that I used is you, Elaine. Just letting you know.
Oh my
you're
God.
In this.
Because I can't be in your dreams, I can be in your fan fiction.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, this is hopefully exciting, and I don't end up dismembered.
You don't worry.
Oh, good. Okay, so it can only go up from here. Good.
Yes. You were scrolling on Bumble, more out of boredom than anything else. You'd swiped right on a few guys, but none of them had really wowed you, you know? Sure, there's plenty of fish in the sea, but it's not the most riveting when all the fish are wearing khakis and said, yeah, let me post that photo of me at my high school graduation smoking a cigar. It's dismal. But perhaps not all hope was lost, because right before you were about to give up and part ways from the Kyles and the Kevins, a mysterious profile caught your eye. Name, Wilbur. Age, left blank. Description, swipe right for a prize beyond your wildest dreams. And while the picture wasn't blank, it was certainly mysterious. All you could see was the silhouette of a svelte man in a top hat and what seemed to be some sort of twin-tailed coat situation. He held a cane in his hand, resting it lightly against the ground. And in that moment, you'd swiped right on that profile. Your life changed you. What? You changed your life forever. I wrote this very quickly. Also, I think it's important to mention to everyone on the podcast, I did write this while I was at work. It was a slow day. You and Wilbur had been talking for a few days now and decided to meet up at a local bakery. You'd suggested a bar, to which he had replied, ew. You weren't necessarily attracted to him, but you did have a morbid curiosity about how the date would go. Would he be wearing the top hat? Would it just be like a normal dude? You entered the bakery and your questions were answered. Sat in a booth by the window was a man wearing a purple top hat, a purple coat with his hands resting on his cane. And you're kind of into it. You strode across the bar to him and held out your hand and introduced yourself. And he pinched your index finger and wiggled it a little bit. Nice to meet you. You can call me Willy, he said, with his perfectly straightened and deep conditioned hair brushing against his shoulders. The two of you sat down and ordered. You got an omelet with a side of sausage, which Willy kind of made a face at. You asked him if he was vegan, but he said that he thinks those people are just kind of ungrateful, and that if I ever met a vegan, I'd stomp on their toes. Willy ordered a big stack of pancakes with whipped cream and chocolate sauce on top, and it was placed on the table. He muttered, I would have done it better. Willy didn't seem to like you necessarily. It almost seemed like he was contractually obligated to be on this date, and at this point, you knew better than to waste your time with guys who didn't even like you that much, so you decided to ask him, Willy, what is it you want out of this relationship? Willy looked up from his leftover pancakes that he was constructing a miniature castle out of with a wide-eyed stare. Relationship? Yeah, we met on Bumble, and I'm trying to figure out what your whole deal is. Oh, you must be mistaken. Willy's brows unfurrowed and he gestured theatrically. I'm not looking for one at all. I've never been in a relationship, actually, and I'm perfectly happy. Just last week, my therapist told me he wonders if I'm even capable of love. He pointed at you with his fork. No, you're actually in the running to inherit my chocolate factory. You spat out your water you were taking a sip from and had a rather unsightly coughing fit. Wait, what the fuck? Why? Willy leaned in close to you. To be honest, I was going to give it to a kid, but the 5 that showed up last time all ended up dead. You moved away from him. Their fault, not mine, he added. You shook your head. Wait, why are you giving it away? You're not like old or anything. He leaned close to you, and because he was already leaning close to you, his torso was like fully on the table at this point. I'm tired of the bullshit, Elaine. He pulled a small golden paper out of his pocket, probably from the scrapbook section at Joanne's, and tucked it into your breast pocket. Take a look. Read it over, he said, and he exited the bakery with a flip of his coattails. You'd retrieve the paper out of your pocket, its gold glitter sticking to your hands and shirt. It read, January 12th, Wonka Factory Headquarters. Be there or be a dumb little turd. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, there's y'all. I don't know if you picked up on it, but Felicia left a lot of good little nuggets from past episodes in there.
you.
Like when I said in the 1971 movie that I didn't understand about Willy Wonka there, but I was kind of into it. I was kind of into him. I was like, I'm attracted to him. Oh my God. That was so
Thank you.
good.
That was my masterwork. So I think this may be a reoccurring saga to kind of talk about Elaine's adventures to perhaps get the chocolate factory. If we do another fanfic episode, I believe I might be returning to the sweet surprise.
Please.
I forgot I called it that.
Oh my God, that was so good. Genuinely,
Thank you.
Felicia.
Thank you.
I loved that so much.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. As you may know, I have made it a joke for this entire podcast that I think Grandpa Joe and Wonka hooked up. I think they were a thing. And a lot of people, mostly Felicia, no one's really talked to me about it, I guess because everyone's like, who fucking cares? But I care.
Yeah.
And Felicia has been like, you know, the age difference. Like a lot of people have been like, the age, the timing, it doesn't make sense. And I'm like, it doesn't have to make sense. It just feels right. And any good fanficker, fickle grubber, any fan fickle grubber, I decided I needed to show people how this could be.
Okay.
And so I have written, it's called an imperfect love. Oh. It is a Wonka / Grandpa Joe. And this is PG-13.
Okay, I need to know which Wonka and which Grandpa Joe. This is important.
So I imagine, I couldn't really figure out which Wonka. I think it's probably more, it's not Johnny. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
Probably going with Gene Wonka. I didn't like really, it's weird, but we're going to go with Gene. They're younger, so not necessarily, but I'm going to go with Tobacco Grandpa Joe.
Yeah, I feel like he's
more of a whore. Here we go. I hope Felicia can look me in the eye after this. I was a little shocked by myself also as I did this. I was drinking wine with my friend and we were trying to make a gingerbread house. The gingerbread house did not turn out right. It was all sorts of fucked up. And in between it fucking up, I would go and write on this. So that's just the ambiance we have.
God.
So, okay, here we go. You love it. Joe Bucket looked up to see Mr. Wonka standing over him, his hat askew as always, his vibrant blue eyes boring into his. He swallowed. Excuse me, sir? Wonka pointed with his cane. The fudge. You love it. I can see it in the way you're crafting it. Joe looked back to the fudge that sat on his pottery wheel. It was one of Mr. Wonka's latest ideas, edible ceramics. Joe was working on a vase that he believed looked quite nice. He'd decorate it with white swirls and blue flowers. I guess so, Joe said with a grin. Mr. Wonka corked a smile, then leaned in over Joe's shoulder, steadying the vase. Ah, but you're missing something, he whispered. Joe froze. He'd never been this close to Mr. Wonka before. He smelled like corn syrup and confectioner's sugar. Joe's heart pounded in his chest. What am I missing, Mr. Wonka? Joe asked. Without warning, Mr. Wonka took his cane and knocked the vase to the ground. It instantly crumbled as it thudded into the tile of the workshop. Joe stared in shock. I spent 5 hours on that, Joe said. He couldn't stop staring at his destroyed masterpiece. I know. It was perfect, Mr. Wonka said. Then why did you destroy it? Joe said. Anger filled him, and he turned to scowl at the maniac, but he hadn't realized how close they'd gotten. They were practically nose to nose. Mr. Wonka's licorice-scented breath tickling his cheeks.
Elaine.
Because sometimes I like imperfect things, Mr. Wonka said. He winked, a small smile growing on his lips. Joe felt his face flush, and he quickly turned back to the pottery wheel. Grabbing a new slab of fudge, he slapped it down to begin his work all over again.
The problem with these is that even if you don't want to imagine it, your brain imagines it for you.
You're seeing it, aren't you?
I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it, and I fucking hate that I'm seeing it.
Page 1 of 12. Elaine. I wish I was joking. Okay. I'll try not to do so well this time, Joe said bitterly. I should hope so, Mr. Wonka said. You are always perfect. Joe licked his lips. Right. He leaned forward to begin shaping the fudge. Mr. Wonka stood up and Joe immediately missed the heat from his body. Thank you for your advice, Mr. Wonka, Joe said faintly. He didn't hear a reply. Mr. Wonka had probably moved on to more important things than Joe. Joe may have been hired for the coveted chocolate assistant team, but it didn't mean that he or anyone else mattered to Mr. Wonka. In fact, Joe didn't think he mattered to anyone, really. At 24, he had lived a decently lonely life. He had once been told that he was so attractive that everyone was afraid to speak to him. His gorgeous brow, thick arms, and tree-trunk thighs had turned out to be a curse. His luscious dark hair as mysterious as the sea at night. His laugh that danced on the wind. It was just too overwhelming for most commoners. It wasn't until he'd found his love of chocolate that he finally found some purpose. He still remembered the day he'd been accepted into Mr. Wonka's apprenticeship program. He'd just spent his last dollar on a bag of sugar and had come home to bake some eclairs when he'd seen the envelope stuck in his door. Now, he'd been able to afford an apartment right across from the factory where he worked. It had all felt like a dream. His dreams at night, though, had started to haunt him. Chocolate burning, cakes sinking, and for some reason, a recurring dream that involved a top-hatted gentleman making him sweat. Joe cleared his throat as he smacked the fudge again.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
Page 3. He heard... Yo, I went off the deep end, okay? I'm scared. I just want to pause y'all. No, I'm still me. I don't know. This is not me.
I appreciate your commitment. I appreciate it.
Okay. Joe cleared his throat as he smacked the fudge again.
Elaine,
I can't.
What did you write?
He heard a grunt behind him and chills instantly ran down his spine.
Elaine,
no. And all of a sudden, he felt strong arms around him. Mr. Wonka wrapped himself around Joe, holding his hands in place on the fudge. He jumped at the unexpected contact, but Mr. Wonka held him in place. I thought you might need some training, Mr. Wonka said. I'm being imperfect. Ah, it was all Joe could say. Mr. Wonka clasped his hands around Joe's. Start pumping the wheel, Mr. Wonka said.
No, get out of here.
So sorry. I'm so sorry. This is my payback for the stop animation.
Yeah, actually, you know what?
This is what
I
it
feel
is.
less sad now. This is good. This is fine.
Okay. Oh my God. Joe did as he was told. He pushed his foot down 1, 2, 3 times. The fudge began to swirl, and Mr. Wonka pressed Joe's hands into the fudge, moving together up and down slowly. The wheel spun faster and faster as Mr. Wonka pressed Joe's hands into the base of the fudge and slowly, oh so slowly, rose their hands to the very opening of the fudge.
Elaine! Elaine, no! I'm taking away your phone.
Like this? Joe asked breathlessly. Precisely, Mr. Wonka replied.
We are not even halfway through.
I can't believe I'm doing this to everybody. But I'm so happy about it. Okay. His lips grazed Joe's ear. Surely this wasn't happening. Was Joe dreaming? Abruptly, Mr. Wonka stood up and took a few steps back. That should do it, old boy, he said. I expect to see 5 like these by the end of the day. Yes, Mr. Wonka. But when Joe finally replied, Mr. Wonka was already gone.
Oh.
Okay. Paragraph intent. Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! Charles handed Joe a flute of champagne. Out of all the Oompa Loompas, Charles was Joe's best friend. They drank whiskey together on their lunch breaks and joked about the other workers in the apprentice program behind their backs.
Okay.
Merry Christmas, Charles, Joe said. They clinked glasses and Joe shot back his flute of champagne. He hadn't seen Mr. Wonka for a whole week since the pottery demonstration. He tried to ignore the heat in his cheeks, even recalling the situation. He must have misread it entirely. Mr. Wonka just wanted the best product, after all. That's why Joe had joined the program, to learn from the best. He was being ridiculous. The Christmas party was always the highlight of the year at the Wonka factory. Edible trees lined the dining hall. The ornaments were hollow chocolate, and when you broke them, a little prize was inside. Joe had found 2 sovereigns in his. Yeah, they're Kinder Eggs. Merry Christmas, Joe. Joe straightened, turning slowly. He saw Mr. Wonka standing behind him with a raised champagne glass, smirking with a mischievous twinkle in his eye. Merry Christmas, Mr. Wonka, Joe managed to say. When they clinked glasses, Joe felt an electrical shock go through his body. I just want to remind you, I'm only going PG-13, okay?
Okay, good.
I just wanted to verify that, okay? I know that things are getting a little tense, a little flushed in here.
Well, I think I mean, if you switch about 3 words in the previous thing, we were in full X-rated territory.
Yeah, no worries, though. Mr. Wonka seemed to notice his shiver and smirked. Chilly, are you, Joe? No, Joe said, laughing uneasily. A bit warm, if anything.
Oh, I thought Wonka Electric did like the hand buzzer trick. Because that was very in brand.
I want that. We'll edit this. Chilly, are you, Joe? No. A bit warm, if anything. Oh, Mr. Wonka looked him up and down. I see. Joe froze. Surely Mr. Wonka wasn't flirting with him, right? I gotta go see Francis about something, Charles said. He quickly walked away, leaving Joe and Mr. Wonka alone. Merry Christmas, Joe said, unsure of what to do now that they were alone. Mr. Wonka laughed. Yes, indeed. Merry, merry, merry. Joe grabbed a second glass of champagne from a nearby table and downed it. The anxiety was threatening to swallow him whole at this point. He'd admired Mr. Wonka for years, the ultimate candy man, the chocolatier. It was incredible what that man could make with his hands. Are you okay? Your face is turning red, Mr. Wonka said. Oh, Joe didn't know what to say, especially when Mr. Wonka's smirk grew into a giant grin. Come with me, Joe Bucket, he said. Before Joe could respond, Mr. Wonka had strutted past him.
I really thought you were going to say Joe Biden there. I don't know why.
Come with me, Joe Biden. Actually, Grandpa Joe is Joe Biden. This was secretly a Joe Biden, Willy Wonka.
God.
You did it, Joe. Okay. Mr. Wonka strutted past him, sauntering with his cane toward the chocolate room. Entranced, Joe followed him down the hall and through the doorway. The chocolate room still took his breath away. The genius of Mr. Wonka was inspiring. Who would have thought to make a room with a garden that was entirely edible? And the chocolate fountain? He'd never known anyone with as much innovation as Mr. Wonka. Are you enjoying yourself, Joe? Mr. Wonka asked. He was watching the chocolate waterfall, his back turned to Joe. He rested his cane over his shoulder, his right leg propped on a milk chocolate boulder. I am, sir, Joe said. Mr. Wonka snorted. Did I say something wrong, sir? Joe said nervously. Mr. Wonka looked over his shoulder at Joe and nodded his head to come forward. Joe walked unsteadily to Mr. Wonka's side and followed his gaze toward the chocolate waterfall. It's beautiful, isn't it? Mr. Wonka said. The liquid chocolate spurted from the man-made cliff of hard candy, rolling at the bottom and turning the chocolate to greet the smooth and decadent taste of Mr. Wonka. Wonka bars, Joe meant the Wonka bars, not Mr. Wonka. No, not the smooth, decadent taste of Mr. Joe. Mr. Wonka tapped Joe's shoulder with his cane. I said it's beautiful. It is, Joe said quickly. Exquisite. Indeed, Mr. Wonka said. Joe peeked at Mr.
that you wrote Gene Wonka incredibly in character. It's annoying how in character you wrote it. You kind of nailed it.
Joe peeked at Mr. Wonka. His gaze was wistful, and he heaved a big sigh, and then turned to Joe. You know what it really is? Mr. Wonka said. Joe shook his head. It's perfect, Mr. Wonka said. He looked back at the waterfall and shook his head. Too perfect. Right, Joe said, though he had no idea what Mr. Wonka was getting at. The waterfall was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. I think it needs to be mussed up, wouldn't you say, Joe? Joe lifted an eyebrow. Sir?
Elaine.
It's actually probably going to be worse than you think. PG-13. Mr. Wonka ignored him, crouching down and dipping a finger in the river. When he stood up, it was coated in thick chocolate. Have you ever tasted the chocolate directly from this river, Mr. Wonka?
Absolutely not.
No, sir, it's not allowed, Joe said. Mr. Wonka took a step forward, slowly stretching out his hand. Would you like a taste, Joe Bucket? Joe felt his stomach flip. Mr. Wonka's finger waggled in front of him, the chocolate dripping slowly to the sugar glass below. Sir, I don't know if Mr. Wonka quickly took his hand back. Right, Mr. Wonka said, of course. I don't know if I should read that. I don't know if I should read that. I will. He stuck his finger in his mouth, pulling it out slowly. Joe couldn't stop his jaw from dropping. It tastes quite good, Mr. Wonka said. Are you sure you don't want to? Mr. Wonka! Charles ran down the path toward them, waving his hands. Mr. Wonka, it's time for the Christmas party toast. Mr. Wonka cleared his throat. Right. He wiped the corner of his mouth and plastered a smile on his face as he looked at Joe. Best be going. Right, Joe said. Mr. Wonka walked briskly away, Charles quickly following in his steed, leaving Joe alone in the chocolate room, wondering why he had the desperate need to dip his fingers in the chocolate river and ask Mr. Wonka if he wanted some more. We're almost done. Oh my god, jeez.
Do you not remember what you wrote?
Ooh, I mean, kind of not. Okay. Remember when I told you I've been reading a lot of like summer beach reads? I think I was channeling that. Okay. And with that, I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Everyone lifted their glass with a cheer as Joe stalked to the back of the room. He was still recovering from whatever had happened earlier. Mr. Wonka had always been odd. Maybe Joe was misinterpreting what he was doing. Yes, that had to be it. Joe ignored the part of him that was sad at this conclusion and grabbed the nearest drink he could find, downing it in one fell swoop. If he kept this up, he'd barely be able to walk home. The party went on for another 2 hours. Joe enjoyed a game of reindeer toss, brandy pong, and the white elephant had him almost in tears when someone screamed opening his present of a chocolate egg bursting with licorice spiders. No one else seemed to enjoy the display, many of the workers jumping on tables and throwing chairs at the sentient spider candies, only to have them crawl in their arms and run into their mouths. No one appreciated it, except for Mr. Wonka, who cocked an eyebrow and flashed him a smile. The party finally died down, and Joe stayed behind to help clean up the decorations. Soon the helpers bid their final goodbyes and best holiday wishes, leaving Joe alone in the hall. He rolled his shoulders back inside. This was ridiculous. He was not going to wait around for his boss to make a move that was never going to happen, because why would it? It would never, ever happen. Mr. Wonka was a professional and solely focused on his craft. Joe was in pure imagination about the relationship. He grabbed his coat and was almost through the doorway when he heard that voice that made his heart melt like chocolate fondue. Joe Bucket. Joe turned around slowly. Mr. Wonka stood a few feet away, his cane clasped between his hands, his blue eyes soft, almost tired. I believe we found ourselves in quite the predicament, Mr. Wonka said gently. Joe instantly blanched. Mr. Wonka must have thought that Joe thought he was coming on to him. He'd think he was a freak, a weirdo, Look, Mr. Wonka said, pointing his cane above Joe's head. Joe looked up to see mistletoe tied with candy cane ribbon hanging above him. Oh, yes, Mr. Wonka said. He walked slowly toward Joe without breaking eye contact. I take it you know the tradition of mistletoe? I do, yes, Joe said. Mr. Wonka stopped right in front of Joe. Joe didn't break their eye contact this time, allowing the intensity of this moment to fill him. What will we do about this, Mr. Wonka? Joe said. He had no idea where his bravado had come from, but there was no turning back now. Mr. Wonka smiled. Joe, my father was Mr. Wonka. Call me Willy. Willy, Joe breathed. Yes? What should we do about the, you mentioned... Mr. Wonka held up a finger to Joe's lips. Shh. He then reached to tuck Joe's hair behind his ear, the touch so gentle that Joe thought his heart would beat right out of his chest. That was until Wonka pulled his hand back from behind Joe's ear and was holding a gold coin in his hand. You had something stuck behind your ear. Good. Joe looked on in confusion as Willy put the whole coin in his mouth, chewed it quickly, and swallowed. Joe's brow broke out into a sweat. I think it's bad luck if we don't follow the tradition of mistletoe, Willy said. I suppose so, Joe said, still reeling from the coin trick. But before he could overthink anything, their faces were soon mere inches apart. Mr. Wonka's mouth fell open slightly, that sweet sugar smell consuming Joe's senses once more. Joe felt his eyes flutter shut. This was it. It was happening. Warm hands cupped his face, his own reaching out for that purple velvet coat Willy always wore, smooth to the touch. Their noses touched, lips grazing, and... It's definitely different than my original theory. Do you know what I mean? Like, sure, the chocolate room had the edible candy. I can follow that suspension of disbelief. But I read this journal online about the dangers of food that look like normal objects, and that room is most likely a death trap. You know what I mean? Joe and Willy broke apart as they stared down two people who had just walked into the room. The one who spoke had a fashionable mullet and a bag made out of Muppet heads, like some warrior puppet slayer displaying their trophies from war. The other was... the other was tall, their shirt covered in salsa stains, holding a jar of Nutella. Felicia, the tall one, said, "I never know what you mean." Here, let me describe it with an obscure metaphor that somehow relates back to the HBO original series Succession. Excuse me, Willy said, clearly irritated. May I ask who you are and what you're doing in my factory? The duo stopped in their tracks. Felicia slapped the tall one's arm in shock, the jar of Nutella flinging out of her hand. Elaine, it's him. Elaine's eyes widened as she slapped Felicia back, Gonzo's head tearing away from the Muppet purse. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my... Excuse me! Willy pointed his cane menacingly at the two. Get out of my chocolate factory! There was a pause. But we bought tickets for the tour, Elaine said. What tour? Willy said. The tour that this weird dude with a cart of knives was selling tickets for, Felicia said. Willy's hair was wild as he clenched his fists and said through gritted teeth, "There is no tour of my factory." You know, it was weird that we were taken through a sewer tunnel, Elaine said. Yeah. You know, that should have been a warning sign, Felicia said. Will stood rigid, clearly unable to speak as the two wandered right between them and out the door. Think they have a gift shop? After they had gone, we're almost done, I promise. After they had gone, Joe felt a coolness between him and Willy. Whatever had been about to happen, that moment had passed. Joe ran a hand through his hair and took a step through the door. "I should be going," he said. "Joe, one last thing," Willy said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a golden box. He smiled sadly. It wouldn't be Christmas without fudge for Joe Bucket, now would it? Joe's heart swelled as he took the box from Willy. "Thank you," he said. Willy nodded his head. Joe cherished one last glance at Willy before heading home. Last section, I promise everybody. It was a tragedy, a terrible twist of fate. An evil plot hatched upon Joe's life. Joe had eaten the whole box of fudge that very night. When he felt ill the next morning, he figured it was from the dessert, but when he looked in the mirror, horror filled his entire body. For an old man stared back at him, but
my God.
It was Joe. Joe was an old man. His shaking hands touched the wrinkles and liver spots on his face. His hair was white and growing in patches. "It cannot be," Joe whispered. But it was. Willy's candies had somehow aged him into an old man, thus making their possible relationship less weird, bitches. For 3 days, Joe Bucket stayed in his apartment. No one could ever see him. Willy could never see him. Not like this. He never went back to the factory. How could he? It was only after he'd started working as a postmaster that he met Josephine, a kind young woman who seemed weirdly attracted to him. It was weird, but hey, what else was he going to do? He married her, bore his son with her, and they grew old together, or rather, she finally grew old enough for him, so it wasn't weird. It was heaven on paper, but hell in his heart. Every night before he fell asleep, he would see his face, those candy blue eyes. He would smell his sugary breath, feel his hands on his face. One day, he decided. One day he would go back to that factory and see Willy Wonka again. But in his heart, he knew there was no way that could ever happen. Wonka would see what an ugly old man he had become, and it would never work. But maybe, just maybe, if he waited long enough, when Willy was older, they could make fudge pottery one last time. A golden ticket to paradise.
Here's the thing. It was very well written, and I was very invested in a way that I didn't expect. I was genuinely tense the entire time you read it. I think that was payback for the Alice thing because you made me invested in it.
First off, again, wrote this last night. Did not recall how long it was. So
I mean, it was phenomenal. I'm glad you wrote it. It was.
At some point, I was like, because, you know, it's not like I set out to try to make this good writing whatsoever. There's just certain aspects where I was like, I did that plot device, didn't I?
Yeah, you used genuine tropes of romance. You were writing a romance novel over here.
And I would like to think that I finally justify. Wouldn't it make sense that Wonka would either accidentally or purposefully, you don't know, give this candy?
It's a bit of a stretch. I think if they were the same age already, I will say I was buying it as you read the fan fiction. When I learned about the age candy, I was a little confused, but that's okay. We can roll with it. We did also show up out of nowhere, but I did love that. That made me very happy.
Yes. Ruin the
working
moment.
on the Muppet purse, so that's good. We're all in
Great.
good shape.
Love it.
I enjoyed the Tinkerman. I appreciated the Tinkerman shout out.
Oh,
I mean, he's
thank you. I couldn't do it without him, you know.
He's
And
so
then
good.
I just needed a third party also. So
Yeah.
Charles the Oompa Loompa, I just, had to
There we
throw him
go.
in there as a friend. Because in my mind, in this version, the Oompa Loompas chose to actively work.
They're
and
just
they
part
are,
of
they
society.
get paid. Yeah, they're part of society. The way that Joe got into this program, Charles
Same.
also got into the
Yes.
program. That's my vision there.
I'm into it. I'm into this Wonka-verse. I
Yeah.
enjoy this.
I blushed a lot reading that.
This inspire absurd amounts of Joe x Willy Wonka. Every time you said Joe Bucket, though, I'd never heard the phrase Joe Bucket, so I kept thinking you were about to say Joe Biden. And every time, whiplash. I'm kind of curious. Who were you picturing Joe Bucket as in this fanfic?
Like, what do you mean?
Like, if there was a person you had to cast to play Joe Bucket in this, I'm curious.
Ooh, I might.
I will say, I was
choose-
able to picture Gene Wonka in this annoyingly well. I was like, oh,
Thank you.
I was
It's like
pissed.
he would be the kind of flirter where he could be weirdly good at it, but then he'd just like go one weird step and you'd be like, wait, what the fuck?
Exactly. I agree
Thank
with you.
I think I could not tell you. I just watched Anna Karenina again. And I feel like whoever plays Count Vrosky, hottie with a body.
I'm looking it up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, iconic.
You see what I'm
Perfect.
saying? You see what I'm
no,
saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm
Yeah.
into that.
I can add that picture at the bottom of this because, guys, should we go ahead and tell them what we're going to do with these?
Oh, yeah, we're going to post these.
We're posting these online. I'm going to post the, whatever. And we're going to see what the reaction is. We'll probably leave links in the show notes, I would say. So feel free to check it out. Leave your comments. We're excited to see how the Wonka fanfic community continues to grow and be a part of it. And I'm terrified to see what this will do. I am terrified to.
Yeah, I feel like you might have
what this
accidentally
will-
started something.
Oh boy,
It was very well
That,
written,
like,
Elaine.
I'm kind of sad though about it. I'm sad.
That you wrote that?
It's very vulnerable sharing your art.
Yes.
That is the first time I've ever written. I don't know. Could we call that smut? It got dangerously there. It flirted. There was a line. A few times where I got real close to the line, might have towed the line.
Yeah.
But hey, you know what? We're an explicit podcast and we finally earned that rating.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. We really did this episode. My goodness.
hey, Timmy. Are you okay? I know that got a little graphic there. Are you okay? Well, you fucked a peach, so whatever.
Honestly, I think he's probably just glad
Never
it's
mind.
not involving one of his characters at this point. He's
Hey,
like, thank
Felicia.
God I dodged that fucking bullet.
Hey, Felicia. Hey, do you have any predictions for the prequel?
Oh my God. I didn't even think about the prequel. I'm in another realm. Hugh-o-Loompa is going to dress like an Italian mobster. That's not a prediction. Actually, no, it is. There's going to be an Italian mobster element in the Wonka film. That's what I'm going to say. That's what I'm going to go with.
Hugh-o-Loompa is going to sing in the prequel and do a dance number that he clearly is not capable of doing, but he's practiced it enough that he's hitting the steps. But it's just like when Christopher Walken was doing the live Peter Pan.
I'm trying to think. Maybe there will be an innuendo that goes a little too far in the movie.
Ooh,
Like a joke that's in there for the parents that goes a little too far, and you're like, ooh, hi, wow. You know what I mean?
Yes. Ooh, I see it. I love
think
it.
that's a good prediction. We can keep my Italian mobster element prediction, but I think what I'm learning is the prediction section. I throw out a prediction that means nothing, and then I get to an actually good and relevant prediction. If you give
every
me 30
episode
seconds.
you're like, I don't know, and then you come out with like 3 right after the other, and I'm like, shut up.
The first one, I'm like, you will see a plate of cookies once, and then 20 seconds later, I'm like, here's an informed and intelligent take. Oh my God.
It's
I
so
guess
good. My eyes are stinging with tears.
I know. I cried a little this episode. I don't know if I've cried yet, but I cried a little this episode.
Welcome to my life.
Oh my God. Thank you everybody for listening to this ragtag adventure of an episode of Wonka Watch. If you want to follow us, do that. That's really kind and cool of you. We're on TikTok and Instagram at Wonka Watch. And if you want to email us perhaps a lost chapter to Elaine's, what was it called again? What was the fanfic called again?
Oh my God. An Imperfect Love, though I am open to new titles.
If you want to add a chapter to Imperfect Love, send us a little email. If you have any suggestions, any ideas, complaints, you want to tell us about how we ruined your week, we'll take them.
We'll read it. If it's safe to say and it fits, we might read it on an episode.
Yes,
so.
that'd be amazing. So wonkarapture@gmail.com. I guess that's about it. Elaine's got some other podcasts.
Angus IT, SLASH Bucklers.
They're good.
Thank you.
Yeah.